Hello and good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to our Uniquely Mana Pools webinar. I'm Tad Bradley from the Cassini Collection. I'm based in Seattle, Washington, along with my colleagues Sonia, who's based in Vermont, and Gretchen in Denver. We are the North American sales and marketing reps for New Frontiers Tours. Today, we have the privilege of getting inside the brain of one of Southern Africa's travel industry legends, New Frontiers Regional Product Manager, Sally Moon. Sally is going to take us on a virtual journey exploring the always stunning Mana Pools National Park in northern Zimbabwe. To borrow a few of Sally's words from her really comprehensive trip report on Mana on the New Frontiers Agent Zone, Mana Pools, beautiful, wild, and remote. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site that is synonymous with the Zambezi River. Outstanding natural beauty, close encounters with big game, exciting canoeing, and what is considered to be some of the best walking anywhere in Africa. With a raw beauty and a deep sense of soul, there are few places that offer a more authentic African safari. And there are also very few camps and lodges in Mana Pools or Zimbabwe or Botswana or Zambia for that matter that Sally hasn't visited. She definitely knows her stuff, and I'm really very thrilled to have her presenting on Mana Pools this morning. We have pre-recorded this webinar today to avoid any technical challenges, but Sally will be available after the webinar for any questions. So please go ahead and type those questions into the Q&A field or the chat field in your system there. We'll also be recording the entire webinar, including the Q&A. So if you have to depart for any reason or miss any of it, or would like to share it with any of your colleagues, you will get a link to that recorded webinar afterwards as well. So without further ado, I am going to pass this along to the recorded version of Sally, and then you'll get to speak with her later afterwards. The webinar is about 20 minutes, and then we'll jump into the Q&A.
Remote and wild, Mana Pools is renowned for offering visitors intimate encounters with all manner of game whilst exploring on foot, relaxing in camp, and out on game drives. This and its timeless beauty and a deep sense of soul has to be experienced firsthand. Mana Pools offers all of this and far, far more. Situated in the far north of Zimbabwe, Mana Pools National Park lies in the heart of the lower Zambezi Valley, which marks the end of the Great Rift Valley. The Zambezi Valley is a wide, flat, low-lying valley that stretches for approximately 60 kilometers between two rugged escarpment ranges, the Zimbabwe Escarpment to the south and the Zambian Escarpment to the north. Forming a natural boundary between Zimbabwe and Zambia is Africa's fourth largest river, the mighty Zambezi. From Mana Pools, the Zambezi meanders for about 300 kilometers through areas of extraordinary natural beauty to Kanyamba, where it flows into Mozambique before ending its 2,574 kilometer journey in the Indian Ocean. Mana Pools National Park is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a status it shares with its downstream neighbors, the Sapi Concession and Chawari Wilderness Area. This magnificent and extensive wildlife and wilderness complex has long been regarded as one of the finest in Africa. The private Sapi Concession was awarded to Great Plains Conservation in 2016, and they have since turned it into a photographic reserve with two recently opened camps, and I have no doubt more to follow. Little known Chawari is home to a couple of fishing camps and some hunting concessions, and currently doesn't feature on the safari circuit. To the west of the map, you'll see Chirundu, which is the main border crossing between Zambia and Zimbabwe. On the Zambian side of the Zambezi, the busy town of Chirundu is the gateway to Mana Pools from Lusaka, and on the Zimbabwe side, the sleepy village of Chirundu is the gateway to Mana from Lake Kariba. The essence of Mana. Unlike most parks in South and Southern Africa, Mana Pools has a complexity that needs to be understood in order to ensure visitors derive maximum enjoyment from their safari. This means matching a client's expectations with not just the right camp, but with the right style of safari, something I'll cover in more depth in a minute. Off the beaten track. To truly appreciate and understand the different vegetation types, trees, open plains, and the mighty Zambezi River, visitors need to get off the beaten track, and the best way to do this is on foot. After all, Mana is a prime walking destination, and walking is the best way to see, hear, and feel Africa. Remote wilderness. Mana is remote, and the further inland one goes, the more remote and wilder it becomes. Sheer beauty. Vast and varied, Mana's striking landscape is dominated by the rugged backdrop of the Zambian escarpment and 80 kilometers of Zambezi river frontage that is flanked by a system of ancient alluvial river terraces. Up to 3.5 kilometers wide, this flat floor of fertile land supports vast stretches of mature woodlands of magnificent cathedral mopani, winterthorn, also known as Anna or apple ring acacia, Natal mahogany, ebony, and fig trees. In the dry season, all manner of game, and especially elephant, move in to feast off the nutritious pods and fruits of these trees. Ethereal light. This is something Mana is famous for and has to be seen to be appreciated. Words really can't set the scene or do justice to the sight of a glorious new dawn as the early morning mist slowly rises up through a canopy of mahogany trees, or the sight of soft golden evening light seemingly bouncing off the escarpment. In Mana, the light varies dramatically throughout the day, making it a photographer's dream destination. Intimate game experiences. Standing only a few meters away from a bull elephant as he stretches up to feed off the top branches of anno trees, walking up to a pair of mating lions, and crawling into a wild dog den. These are once-in-a-lifetime experiences that are so very Mana. Safari adventure. Walking and exciting canoeing safaris are synonymous with Mana Pools. In the dry months of July to October, one of the most exciting safari adventure experiences is a 3-night camping and walking safari at Chitaki Springs, which is situated at the foot of the southern Zimbabwe escarpment, 50 km inland from the Zambezi River. Truly wild and remote, Chitaki is an area of crucial importance to the wildlife in this part of Mana, as the water flows out of the ground for up to 1 kilometer along the otherwise dry riverbed of the Chitaki River. Game viewing in this area is absolutely extraordinary. Game viewing. Covering 2,230 square kilometers, much of Mana Pools is inaccessible, as despite its size, the road network is relatively limited. As previously mentioned, to truly appreciate Mana Pools, one has to explore off the beaten track on foot. Interestingly, there are no rhino or giraffe in Mana. Sadly, rhino have been lost to poaching, whereas the steep escarpment to the south and the river to the north form a natural giraffe-proof barrier. The river is home to a large population of hippo and crocodile, which means a canoe safari is not for the faint-hearted. It goes without saying birding is superb. During the safari season of April to November, national park rules prohibit the use of motorboats in the park, which means fishing is only possible from the banks of the river. Being a national park, no off-road driving or night drives are permitted. The changing seasons. Mana Pools is a seasonal park with most camps closing between mid to end November and opening again in April. Between April and mid-November, it's known as the dry season and a glorious time to visit. Although each month is special in its own way, the best game viewing months are October and November. Despite the extreme heat and dryness experienced during these months, visitors are rewarded by fantastic sightings as the animals congregate along the Zambezi floodplain and at Kangapan and Chitaki Springs, which are the only source of permanent water for miles around. Access is by air from Victoria Falls, Harare, Kariba, or Hwangi, with Altair, Wilderness Air, and Safari Logistics, all of whom offer seat rates. It's important to note Wilderness Air and Safari Logistics operate to a fixed schedule, which may mean a short stop in Kariba for refueling. It's also very important to note it's not possible to arrive into Victoria Falls off a regional flight and transfer through to Mana Pools on the same day. The same applies in reverse. We don't recommend clients fly out of Mana Pools on the same day they're departing Victoria Falls on a regional flight. We also encourage visitors to fly to Harare as it's a shorter flight time, plus it's slightly cheaper. Transfers by motorboat are possible from Chirundu to Rakomachi and to Mana Pools Safari Company. Riverfront versus inland. The attraction of Mana Pools is the sheer beauty of the Zambezi River and the Zambian escarpment, as well as fantastic game viewing whilst exploring the alluvial terraces or floodplain on foot. We therefore recommend visitors spend at least 3 nights at a riverfront camp, which can be followed by a few nights at an inland camp. Moving inland, the landscape changes to multiple flay lines, river systems of the Rakomachi River, which is dry during the safari season, and mixed woodland types from Apani to thick Jesse bush and riverine forests. You can see from the map there are a number of riverfront camps, whereas there are currently just 3 inland safari camps: Kangapan in the west of the park, Kavinga in the south, and Sapi Springs in the Sapi concession. The inland camps of Kanga and Kavinga come into their own during the dry season months of July to November, as the pans in front of these 2 camps are the only water source for miles around. Safari style. Safari style activities and location need to be taken into consideration when choosing a camp. As in Mana, more than most places, it's important to choose a camp that really matches your client's expectations. Semi-permanent camps. These are both riverfront and inland semi-permanent camps. Riverfront camps are Rakomachi, Chikwenya, Vundu, Mana Pools Safari Lodge, Namatusi, and Namatusi Mahogany. Inland camps are Kanga and Kavinga. Rakomachi and Chikwenya are both situated in private concessions bordering Mana Pools. Rakomachi on the western border and Chikwenya on the eastern border. Both camps offer a high degree of comfort, with Chikwenya being the more exclusive of the 2 camps. Activities take place in their private concessions rather than in the park, and neither camp offers the really up-close and personal experience offered by some of the smaller bush camps. A detailed comparison of the 2 camps is posted on our agent zone. Vundu Camp is privately owned by Nick Murray, who hosted and guided the BBC team who shot the Wild Dog episode for David Attenborough's Dynasty series. Homely rather than stylish, the emphasis at Vundu Camp has always been on providing great guiding and an all-round safari experience. Mana Pools Safari Lodge is now being marketed by Zambezi Cruise and Safaris, a well-priced and camp and with probably the largest chalets in Mana Pools. We believe this relatively new camp will be popular with small groups and families. Namatusi and Namatusi Mahogany. Recently opened, this family-friendly camp is most stylish and comfortable. In true African bush camp style, great emphasis is put on the importance of guiding. Kanga. Kanga coined the term of the armchair safari. Situated in a private concession over an hour's drive from the river, the pan in front of Kanga is the only water source for a 20-kilometer radius. When the natural pans start to dry out, which is usually towards the end of June, Kanga's pan becomes a magnet for all manner of game. As a result, guests can enjoy amazing interactions from the comfort of camp. Kavinga is situated in the hilly south of the park, 9 kilometers from Chitaki Springs. Accommodation is in comfortable raised canvas chalets which is set on the edge of a steep cliff overlooking the wide expanse of the Rakomachi riverbed. Below the camp is a pan with a hide that provides incredible close-up photographic opportunities. Kabinga is known for offering an intense safari experience. Light footprint camps. The light footprint camps are John's Camp, Goliath Camp, Little Vundu, Zambezi Expeditions, Sapi Explorers Camp, and Sapi Springs. As far as I'm concerned, these camps really capture the essence of Mana Pools. Accommodation is authentic bush camp style, simple but comfortable, with meals enjoyed al fresco under the stars. All the camps mentioned offer really great guiding, but it's at Goliath Camp, John's Camp, and Little Vundu where guests really have the opportunity to get a glimpse into the real Mana whilst out on foot. I believe the two Great Plains camps, which are situated in Sapi, will be the forerunner to other camps to come. In true Great Plains style, they offer a high degree of expedition-style comfort and a variety of activities. Ingui Pan is being built by Chaba Safaris and will complement their soon-to-be opened Wangi properties. Ingui is due to open late 2019 or early 2020. I understand it will be located inland in the vicinity of one of the 4 perennial inland pools, which were formed when the Zambezi River changed course thousands of years ago. The name Mana, which means 4 in the local Shongan language, was derived from these pools. Private tented camps. A camp is a fully serviced walking and or canoeing camp, which offers flexibility and the ultimate wilderness experience. Safari style with bucket showers and long drop or chemical toilets. These eco-friendly camps are designed to be erected and dismantled within hours, leaving noise on the environment. Due to their popularity, especially at Chitaki, sites need to be booked at least a year out. Riverfront. The riverfront camps are Camp Zambezi, a rustic, static camp which is ideally suited to those who want flexibility to explore Mana Pools on game drives, on foot, and by canoe. Mana Shoreline, walking or canoeing. These are generally 3-night walking or canoeing safaris that follow the Zambezi through Mana Pools National Park. Nights are spent in mobile camps. Inland is Chitaki Mobile Camp. It's a walking camp that offers incredible photographic opportunities, but it's not for the faint-hearted, as one can expect to be surrounded by herds of literally hundreds of elephant and buffalo with lion in close attendance. River God Adventures. Last but not least is River God Adventures, which is a unique 5-night river adventure along one of Africa's great rivers. Departing from Kariba Dam Gorge, River God traverses for 245 kilometers downstream to Kanyemba on the border of Mozambique, passing through Mana Pools, the Lower Zambezi National Park, and the stunningly beautiful Mapata Gorge, which collectively form a World Heritage Site. No 2 days are the same, as each day is spent embracing a new section of the Zambezi Valley, whilst exploring vast stretches of untouched wilderness, both on foot and by boat. Nights are spent moored at different islands or alongside the bank of the river. Up to 8 guests travel on board Challenger, a custom-built aluminium and fiberglass twin pontoon boat measuring 10 meters by 4 meters. There is a crew of at least 3, a captain, guide, and deckhand. Accommodation is in 4 pop-up sleeping pods that are furnished with proper beds and linen. On board is a shower and flush loo. Meals are simple but tasty. They may be taken on board, under a gazebo on an island, or beside a campfire on the riverbank. Days are spent game viewing, fishing, and birding. Game drives and walking may be arranged on request. Although I've not experienced River God adventures, I believe it offers a perfect escape for those seeking a safari with a difference in one of Africa's most beautiful national parks. All that is left for me to say is thank you for joining me on this safari journey through Mana Pools. I do hope you found it enjoyable and informative.
Thank you so much, Sally. Speaking of that ethereal light, you painted such a wonderful and vivid picture of Mana. We're going to start the Q&A here in just a second. I need to give Sally her voice back. There you go. Sally, are you with us?
Yeah, hi, Tad.
Hi, Sal. How are things? How are things in Durban this evening?
Excellent, thanks. And it's good to be with you guys. Thanks for your time.
You bet, and thank you for the wonderful portrait that you painted of Mana. We do have some questions here, so I'm going to jump right into those and get your expertise. First question, can you fly to Harare from Mana Pools and catch an international flight out on the same day?
Yes, you can. It really depends on the time of the flight. I would say that you will get into Harare at around one-ish, or no, let's say about 12 to catch a flight out at about 1:30, 2 o'clock.
And speaking of flights,
in that case, we would probably be using Altair because they tend to be slightly more flexible with their times. But yes, you can.
And speaking of flights, Sally, can you just give us an idea of the length of flight from Harare, Wangi, and Vic Falls, and just roughly speaking, cost?
I'm going to pass on that one because I like to be so accurate, and you've caught me out. Sorry about that. I should know that off the top of my head, but I don't want to give wrong information.
So you are nothing if not accurate. So we will send that information out via email. Oftentimes get questions, and we have another one here about the possibility or the logistics of combining the lower Zambezi on the Zambia side of the river and Mana Pools. I know there are some logistical challenges. Can you just talk in general terms about how, or if you can do so, and if it's recommended?
No, if you're coming down by road from Lusaka in Zambia, you can cross into the Mana Pools via the Chirundu border post. It's one massive great border post, a huge building that has Zambia on one side and Zimbabwe on the other side. But quite honestly, you wouldn't really combine the lodges in the lower Zambezi with the lodges in Mana Pools. Scenery is sort of fairly similar, lodge styles are different, but it's not practical to combine the two.
Okay, and you finished with River God Adventures, which
yes,
makes me want to pack my bags and hop on a flight. As you know, like you, it's one of those things that is on my must-do list at some point. But we have a question here about River God and how do they arrange a game drive? Do they bring out vehicles?
No, they don't. They would arrange with the lodge. So it's a matter of how busy the lodges are, and then they would organize a game drive. To be honest, I think once you're on board River God, you really want to stay on board. They have tender boats for fishing, and the game comes down to the river's edge, so you're not missing out. And in fact, I feel that it's more private being on River God because you're not with any other vehicles. The joy is being on the river, depending on the depth of the river, sandbanks, because the river's always changing. Sometimes the captain will cruise along the Zambian side. Of course, he can't more up on the Zambian side, but river regulations permit him to go into Zambian waters. So he's sort of cruising as and when where the deep waters take him, if that answers your question.
Gotcha, yes. And then as far as Oh, go ahead, Sally.
Sorry, just one point about River God. They only operate in one direction, and that's down from the base of Kariba Dam wall, or they might depart from Chirundu depending on water levels, and then they go through to Kanyemba. Coming back upstream is never ever the same, and they do that in a hurry to get back to Kariba again. So you can only go one way, and that is downstream.
And then what are the logistics like at the end of, once you've finished that trip through the gorge and at the downstream end of the cruise? How do you get from there to Harare or wherever?
Good question. You actually spend the last night in a small private lodge, which is owned by the family of Kewen, who runs River God Adventures. And from there, you charter out from their little local airstrip to Harare. And that would be a private charter.
Okay. And what is the season for River God?
Approximately April to early November. They've only been operating for a year. There's still a bit of work in progress, but that's generally the season I would expect them to operate. Bearing in mind, the later in the season, the hotter it's going to be. So once again, it's not going to be for the faint-hearted, because you are obviously stuck on the boat, but then there's river breezes. So it's got its pros and cons. But I just truly believe it's a wonderful way to travel.
We'll send out more information on it in the follow-up to this webinar as well. And then Sal, just do you recommend combining an inland camp with a riverfront camp on a Mana safari, if you have the time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you know, believe it or not, there are people that will spend at least 10 nights in Mana. Those are usually very keen walking clients and photographers. So that's not unusual. These days, time's limited, so we tend to think 2-3 night stays. I believe Mana, to do it justice, you should stay at least 5 nights. 3 nights in a riverfront camp and 2 to 3 nights in an inland camp. Having said that, the inland camps really come into their own from around about mid-end June, early July, through to the end of the season. The whole reason for staying in an inland camp is to experience the game congregations around the pans. And when there's surface water around, the game is sort of fairly dispersed. As the surface water dries up, they have no option but to go to the pan at Kanga, the big waterhole at Kavinga, and of course the Chitaki Springs area. But yep, definitely riverfront and inland. I would never ever send anybody to Mana just to stay at an inland camp.
That does kind of defeat the purpose with the river, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And obviously, Mana is epic and legendary for active safaris. As you mentioned, walking, certainly one of the best, if not the best place on the continent. Canoe safaris, very well known for. If you do have guests that are a little bit twitchy or hesitant about getting out on foot or going into a canoe, what is the availability of game drives, and are there certain camps that are more conducive to doing just vehicle safaris versus the more active walking or canoeing safaris?
All the camps, I say that, except for a private camp such as the Chitaki Springs setup, but all the riverfront camps offer game drives just as any other camp in any safari destination. So yeah, there's no problem just doing game drives. Not all the camps offer canoeing. If somebody was really interested in canoeing, that would have to be specified so we could advise as to which camp would be the best. One of the reasons for not offering canoeing is you have to have pro canoeing guides, and not all those camps have those in their team. So we would need to check on that.
Gotcha. And then we've got a couple questions about Rukamenshi, and I think it's really more of a private concession versus the park question, based on personal experiences. So a couple of folks on the webinar have said they were at Rukamenshi and they did go fishing on a boat, and they did night drives. Can you talk about the differences or the availability of activities such as fishing on a boat in the river versus on the shore, as well as like night drives and what's permissible inside the national park and on a private concession?
Absolutely. Rukamenshi is situated in a private concession that it sort of slightly straddles Mana pools. So being in the private concession, they can obviously go on game drives. They offer walking. They are allowed to operate motorboats, and they also offer canoeing. Motorboats are not allowed in the national park during the main season. Having said that, I've just been advised there is a company that literally I was advised yesterday that's offering boat transfers from Chirundu through to the national parks set up in Mana. Those boat transfers will obviously take guests, but not directly into their camps, because national parks want to be able to monitor who's entering Mana, for the obvious reasons, anti-poaching, etc., etc. The boats will also transfer foodstuffs and staff to the Parks Board from where they're collected by their camps. That's something brand new. I read the email yesterday, and I'm going to investigate it further. But quite honestly, I feel that most people, to save time, really should probably fly into their camps. It's just a lot easier and more comfortable.
Okay, and this is a great question, and speaks to another place that I know you love, Mana versus Kariba. If a client doesn't have time for both, what are the key differences, and when would you choose one over the other?
Phew. Difficult. They would have to make time. But seriously, Kariba is scenically totally different. It's a massive lake, 280 kilometers long approximately and 40 wide. It's described by the Zimbabweans as their inland sea. Activities are slightly different, and it's not an intense game experience. There is game at Kariba. We sell it as a game destination, but you don't have the large herds that you do in Mana. You don't get up close and personal to the game as you do in Mana. Walking depends on the camp you stay in. Kariba is just such a beautiful place, scenically beautiful, relaxing. There's nothing like the Kariba sunsets, the birding, fishing. It's a gentler experience, a far more, a gentler experience than at Mana. If clients can find the time, it's really nice to stop in Kariba for maybe 2 nights, chill out a bit, relax, just enjoy different scenery and then go on to Mana. But I can understand people can't spare the time to do both. So it's very much on the client. If they want adventure, if they want great game viewing, opportunities to do a variety of activities, including maybe some canoeing, then it's got to be Mana, because you don't canoe at Lake Kariba. The crocodile population is absolutely vast.
It's a good reason to stay out of a canoe, for sure. Well, that's a good
swim in the lake.
Right. That's a good segue, Sally. I think we've exhausted all of our questions. Some great questions, so thank you all. But that's a great segue. You'd mentioned the differences, or talked about Kariba, and there's a fantastic trip report written by Sally on Kariba, as well as on Mana Pools on the New Frontiers Agent Zone. So you can see the URL on your screen there. We can send, for those of you that are not currently working with New Frontiers, we would certainly love to chat, but we can also send you temporary credentials for the Agent Zone, where you can have a look around. It is an incredibly comprehensive informational site that has not only Sally's trip reports, which are probably the most comprehensive. No disrespect to anybody else at New Frontiers, but also trip reports and reviews of other properties throughout South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Mozambique, and then a lot of other great marketing fodder that you can use. So feel free to email me. You see my email address there, tad@CusiniCollection.com, if you'd like to have a look around the Agent Zone. And then Sally's contact details is there as well. Sally is here to supplement the incredible knowledge of New Frontiers consultants. And obviously she has the enviable job of getting out on the road to explore literally almost every camp in Botswana, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, and Mozambique. So she really has an incredible depth of knowledge. So you can always, for those of you who are working with New Frontiers, you can loop Sally in if you need some regional expertise or have a real creative solution to a unique client's travel desires. And we will send out links to the Agent Zone as well as to Sally's trip report on Mana Pools, and then a full recording of this webinar later today or tomorrow. If you have any further questions, feel free to email Sally or me, and we will respond in due course. And thanks so much for spending the time to learn a little bit more about Mana Pools. And Sally, thank you so much for your time and for staying late at the office over there in South Africa.
Not at all, Tad, and thank you. I've just checked the flight times, so just very quickly, Kariba to Mana is approximately 30 minutes, depending on which airstrip in Mana you're landing at. I mean, they're all relatively close. From Mana to Harare, it's approximately 1 hour 35, and from Vic Falls to Mana, approximately 2 hours 10. I'd just like to thank everybody for their time and for listening, and for supporting Zimbabwe and Mana Pools.
Thank you, Sally. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Cheers.
Thanks.